The main upgrade from the Xteink X4 to the X4 Pro is pretty obvious, but some changes are a debatable downgrade, and at a heftier price tag that makes this hard to recommend unless you absolutely need a built-in light. I put the X4 Pro through 3 weeks of real-world use as my main e-reader, and this video will focus not on the technical specs, but on what I'd want to know if I was considering this device as an avid reader who has been reading on e-ink for over a decade. Let's get right to the big new feature here, a built-in front light, which the original X4 doesn't have. It has settings for brightness and also for warmth. Here it is next to some mainstream e-readers. The X4 is on the lowest possible brightness setting here, while the other e-readers are at 6. The light level is pretty good for allowing you to read even in a dimly or poorly lit room. But my disclaimer is I sleep next to someone in a nearly pitch black room, and I find this too bright for that specific bedtime reading context. I wish it could go a few steps dimmer and maybe warmer. This part doesn't bother me, but you may notice some light leakage on the borders of the device, at least on the grey model. The X4 Pro also has a bigger battery capacity than the X4, which helps offset how much more of it the front light uses up. I tracked some of my actual reading time, leaving the light on the whole time at the lowest brightness, and got around 10 hours of reading on stock firmware. Of course, you can get much more time by turning the light off when you don't need it, and hopefully Xteink will continue to improve the efficiency of the firmware. Speaking of batteries and charging, a controversial change here is that the X4 Pro charges with pogo pins, unlike the X4 which uses USB-C. So you're given a dongle that you can stick to the end of any USB-C cable or charger you already have. Note that this connector is not exclusive to Xteink, so you can pick one up third-party if you need extras. Interestingly, it also supports transferring data via USB mode, so you could drop in files like it's a USB drive. With the X4, you either load the SD card or use a wireless transfer method. This connector is not a deal breaker by itself for me, but it is for a lot of people, so you'll have to decide if you're one of them. The hardware change I dislike more is the switch to touchscreen instead of only button navigation like on the X4. So there are no more physical page turn buttons in front, they just kept the page turn buttons on the side. If you're using this as intended on your phone or you're holding it while you're out and about, you might accidentally tap the screen. So thankfully they did add an option in the reader to turn off touch on the screen while in a book. But I still miss those front buttons. For the page turning, for example, I found the responsiveness better with the physical buttons compared to tapping the page. Some of the changes I mentioned are probably to save space, and on a technical level, it's pretty impressive since they fit a front light into a device about the same size. I do question why though, since I wouldn't have minded a slightly thicker device in exchange for keeping the front buttons and USB-C. The built-in magnet is placed differently. For example, with the X4, if you had an iPhone, you basically had to have it on upside down to stick well, while the X4 Pro aligns and attaches well right side up, although it is a bit too long on my iPhone 16. In terms of software, stock software is clearly still a work in progress. It changed a lot during the weeks I used it, so it's hard to comment on. At the moment, there are a few features missing from it that are already on the original X4, but it does work as a basic EPUB reader, and I was able to finish a few books on it. On the current international version, there are 2 built-in sans serif font options. There used to be a serif option, which I hope they bring back, but if not, you can convert your own fonts using the Xteink app. Current firmware does show italics, bold text, and at least from what I've seen in French and Portuguese, pretty complete accents. There is also support for images in EPUBs, which is pretty nice if you're reading something with occasional illustration like a light novel. Keep in mind this is not Android powered, so there are no apps. The most you can do is install community firmware. I'll link to information on options below. Now this is not really about the device itself, but we have to talk about the price point. Although $100 is cheaper than Android pocket-sized e-readers, it's nearly the same price as a full-sized regular e-reader, which would be bigger but also much more full-featured with less tinkering required. The appeal of the original X4 is it's basic but also fairly affordable. It's priced low enough it's easier to just take a chance on. By comparison, you could potentially get an X4 to have a pocket-sized e-reader, and an older device secondhand to use as your home or bedtime reader for around the same price as the X4 Pro. That makes this really tough to blindly recommend as an upgrade. So who would I recommend the X4 Pro to? If you think the form factor and MagSafe are really cool and the built-in light is a non-negotiable, it's a solid option. It's smaller and cheaper than Android e-readers, and most importantly has a very active community working on adding cool features to it, which is another leg up over some other pocket e-readers in the same price range. But for everyone else, between the buttons, the more mature and developed software, the more convenient charging for the X4, and a price point that makes you less scared of taking it everywhere, I would pick up or stick with the X4 or X3. I know at least I've put the X3 back on my phone and have gone back to my regular nice and dim e-readers for night reading.